this one's probably maybe a little lackluster, but I think it has a little bit of everything that we've talked about, like playing within its own universe and doing things that you don't see every day, but it's acceptable in the universe that it's in. There's a past between these two characters. You don't, unless you've read the book before you saw this movie, you wouldn't necessarily know all of the details, but you can tell there's a chemistry, there's a past, they have a relationship with each other. And I'm talking about Gandalf and Saruman. When Gandalf the Grey versus Saruman the White, when he goes into the Fellowship of the Ring, he comes to tell him that they found the ring and that this hobbit named Frodo has it. And he tries to look into the magic 8 ball, basically, and he's covering it up. And then you start seeing, Saruman's shady. He's been corrupted here. And you basically have a fight where they physically are harming each other, but never physically touch each other with flesh to flesh.
I know, yeah.
So to me, that's what's kind of cool. Like, it's kind of has all the elements we've talked about with what makes a great fight. And it also leaves a little bit of wonderment. What's going to come between these two? There's never really a payoff between that in the movies because of the way it ends. So there's never like a rematch or anything. But there's, because I think Gandalf even more, he feels more sorry for him in the end. And it's like, let him just go in peace kind of thing. But to me, that was one of the coolest fights. And then the good guy loses in that fight. And then I'm not rooting for Saruman in that moment. But, the good guys have to go through some struggles at that point. So Gandalf loses that fight and then obviously escapes later. But one of and staying on Lord of the Rings just for a minute before we get to yours, is the teased fight in the movies that we never got between Gandalf and the Night King, or
you're talking about the Return of the King, the last film?
Return of the King. They tease the fight, and then it never actually happens.
The Witch King?
Yeah, the Witch King of Agmar.
Agmar. The big mouth guy. Okay.
And the one that
teased it. Wait, no, you're talking, I'm sorry, not the Witch king. Are you talking about...
The Witch King of Agmar, they tease it. He ends up fighting on his Nazgul and gets killed by... He says, and she's like, I am no man. She kills him.
Right.
But earlier in the movie, Gandalf says, there's one I have not faced. He's the witch. And so they tease it with this big introduction that he's this scary, formidable thing, and he's more dangerous than the rest of the 9. And he's the main one, and he's the one that's going to be the physical. And then they never even actually encounter each other.
Right.
So it's almost like, why was that in the movie? And I'm not trying to go negative here, but it's just always something I thought, like, why was that tease played? Why how did that slip through the editing process? I guess because they wanted Gandalf to build this character up. So then when she kills him, it's a moment for her character. But I guess that was the point of it. But like for me, when you watch it, it feels more like it's building up a hype matchup between Gandalf and the Witch King.
Yeah, and I confused someone there, so I'm going to apologize to all the fans out there for my mistake. I was thinking the big mouth guy was the voice of Sauron, and there wasn't really. I don't think there was a fight. I think Aragorn chopped his head off before the big fight at the end of Return of the King. It was in a deleted, not a deleted scene.
It was the extended version of the Return of the King, the 4.5-hour version.
Right, the big long one. But that Witch King, that tease and that whole thing, and the fact that it wasn't going to be Gandalf taking him out. In fact, in that extended scene, you saw that it wasn't Gandalf's staff broke when. He actually did go up against the Witch King, on the side of the castle, and all of that. And so, but it was obviously anticlimactic because
if you're waiting for that moment to happen based on that one little scene, and it's just those little scenes that stick out to me in movies, and it's like, they're bringing it. Oh, I knew that was going to happen because they said it earlier. It was a little, so it felt like a foreshadow that it felt like it was meant to be something else than it actually turned out to be, or just they chopped that part of the movie out, and maybe they did have an encounter, and I just never saw that part. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. But getting back to the positive, the Gandalf versus Saruman encounter, that's kind of really all the things we talked about in the first episode and in this episode. I think hits all those check marks, really.
It does, and I always remember the fact that watching that for the very first time, I'm like, obviously, you know, you're going to have some stuntmen in there, but it's not like I saw their faces or anything like that. And you think of these old men, you know, with bones crunching and all that, and you're like, you know.
Well, if you watch him in Christopher Lee in the Star Wars movies, when they go to the long shots and the stunt doubles if you watch the behind the scenes stuff and know what the stunt double looks like, if you've seen that actor, that stunt double man, you can tell so easily when he's standing in for Christopher Lee, like all those long shots, you can tell it's not the same person. So even in a high budget $200 million movie like Star Wars, you still catch these like things if you're because George thinks you're looking over here at the screen, but if you look where you're not supposed to be looking, you can find mistakes.
Yeah, because we had our eyes on Yoda, maybe.
Flipping around doing this. So
my choice, and you know, like you did, I think what you did was really cool there. You kind of teased up to that point before telling. Passion is definitely a part of this. There is no necessarily history in this version of this story between these two characters, because in this universe of these two characters of conflicting, fighting with each other, this is essentially the first time they have met. And what I'm talking about is Batman versus the Joker in the Dark Knight trilogy, the Christopher Nolan one. In that case, they don't have this long past together like in the comic books, you know, this is the first time that they are encountering each other, and the Joker has come out of nowhere. And literally
Batman's almost reluctant to even get into this. He's like the mob or one man, you know, like he's like, what do you want me to deal with here, you know, like, so he almost he's like, oh, check. Even at the end of the first Batman movie with Bale, they tease the Joker coming in the sequel, and he's just like, I'll check it out. Like, it's very nonchalant. Like, Batman's like, this guy's not important.
It's just one man, right? Yeah. How dangerous can this one man be? Yeah. But what the one man was able to do was cut Batman to the core, because he used, you know, the morality of Batman against himself, because Batman, you know, and I actually met Michael Uslan. He came to Ball State. He's the executive producer of Batman. He's also worked for DC Comics, so he was very passionate about when we're going to bring Batman back out of the ashes, essentially, or the failures. Okay, I'll just say it. Failures of the Joel Schumacher Batman Forever, Batman, you know, and Robin, and let's take a serious take on this. So they brought in, you know, Christopher Nolan, and let's make this a Dark Knight character.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget Batman Returns did have penguins with rocket launchers on their back, so there was even ridiculous moments
in the
trending in that. And
even the Tim Burton '89 film had some of that, but I still love the Tim Burton '89 film. That's one of my favorites.
And I know, can I just say something that will get me skewered right now? Is that I refer to Michael Keaton's Batman, or not his Batman, his Bruce Wayne is like Ross from Friends to me. Well, he's got such a neurosis about him. He's so neurotic that like he just reminds me of Ross from Friends. Like he's in like the on the date with Vicky Vale, and he's just kind of like. He's just like awkward and like, can you see my teeth? I
think that was.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying that like that's what that version of Bruce Wayne reminds me of, and it's a different take. It's almost like the Mark Ruffalo's take on Bruce Banner with the Hulk. He's he's nervous, and especially in the first Avengers movie. I think it's expanded, maybe not so much for the good in the new movies, like he's gone a little bit too comedic with it. Like in that first Avengers movie, he did a really fantastic job. So that's what it kind of reminds me of, where they're neurotic but then when they turn into their alter ego, they're these badasses, and it's basically the same for Keaton's Batman. But go back to Bale and Ledger.
Yeah, what I really loved about that is that when Uslan said we're going to bring this Batman. You're going to understand why Batman chooses not to use a gun, because he tried to in the first film, and he just couldn't do it. He couldn't kill the man who killed his parents. And so he's got the Joker here, and Joker has no problem using all the weapons and bazookas and whatever else and all that. But what the Joker was doing was using the morality of Batman, and the Bruce Wayne character against him, because he's against killing. So if he can capture the villain, put him in behind bars for life versus killing him, that's what Batman's going to choose to do. And so that's why he plays chicken with him at one point, and he's just like, come here, come at me, and all this, and Batman can't run him over with a motorcycle, and he wrecks it. And so that whole time he's trying to get into the head of Joker, and he cannot do it. He can't understand, what is this guy's motivation?
Because he doesn't understand them, and and it's really that great scene with Kane and Bale, and they're kind of in that technological dungeon down there with, and they're he's analyzing the bullet thing, and he's like, oh, he's got to have a motive, Alfred. He's got to have a motive.
Yeah.
And he is like, well, some people just don't have motives, and he's like, well, he wants something. What does he want? He doesn't want anything. He just wants to watch the world burn.
Right.
And he gives them that story about finding and he found the jewels in the forest, and he didn't keep any of it.
Yeah.
He just wanted he just wanted to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
And that's a really just two people talking. That's a great scene.
Yeah. Well, and the motive, he's like, criminals are not complicated. Criminals are not complicated. That makes sense. They shouldn't. They have a motive. They have something that they want. And it's money, it's power, it's something, that's tangible, or at least it's something that elevates them to somewhere. And, he burns that big stack of cash, and it's like all the other, the gang members with him, and what are you doing? He wasn't in it for that. He wanted to break Batman down, and he wanted to see Gotham, turn on itself. He had, that great scene with the prisoners on the boat who had the detonator for the other boat, and the more, elitist
The question
people.
is if they had pushed it, would they have just blown themselves up, or the other people?
And you never know.
Was he just playing with it? Would it blown both boats up?
Yeah.
Just to do it. Actually, I don't think he would have gone that route, because he wanted to prove to Batman that, I think he would just let them kill the other people, because that was the point.
Yeah.
Was to let them kill each other, and you can see how rotten everyone really is, and look who you're protecting. Because Joker's point was, at the end of the day, everyone's as ugly as I am.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to prove it. And he was such a... At the end of the day, when he's by himself and he's in a room and he's going to sleep at night, because at the end of the day, Joker is a human being, so I assume he sleeps and eats and does these things. Does he go to bed at night and say, just what depressing thoughts does he have? He can't maintain that level of energy at all times that he displays around everyone else. There has to be those moments of calm where he's reflecting inside of himself and thinking, and what are those thoughts? And they probably are very ugly thoughts, and the only way to validate himself is, I'm going to go after Batman because that's the figure I need to go after, and that's going to get everybody's attention to do it.
Yep.
But it's just as much of a ploy against Batman as it is against the rest of humanity. Really, he's like, I'm going to prove to Batman and all of you that you're all just as ugly as I am. Yeah. That's what I get out of that.
And that he can be corrupted. That he corrupted and he broke down Harvey Dent. He cut him to the core.
If you can do it to the best of us, as Batman says, if he can break down the best of us, what chance do the rest of us have? Basically at one point, Batman is kind of like, well, maybe the Joker's right. Maybe we all are. Kind of just, and it's a fleeting thought, I think, in the movie when he says it or whatnot, whatever the line is. But it's like, it's not so much, because when they actually fight each other physically, it's not much of a fight.
Yeah,
the Joker has a couple tricks. He wounds him a little bit, but the longer that fight goes on, you don't want to dance with this guy, as they say in another new movie that I'm not going to say the name of again. It's like, you don't want to dance with this guy. And the Joker, one-on-one, I know, nobody... He's not going to be able to fight Batman. He's got all the martial arts. He's basically a ninja. He is a ninja.
Yeah.
In those movies, at least in that version of the movies, he is a ninja. That's basically what he was trained to be. Mm-hmm. So
at the top of his game too, because in the next film they show him old and aged and out of shape and beat up by all.
Yeah. So on that level, maybe it doesn't tick the box of the choreography doesn't go into
Yes.
that route,
Yeah.
but the whole film and the build up and the psychology behind it, because of the chemistry of just basically Heath Ledger just going absolutely insane as an actor, like in a good positive way. I mean, that just completely annihilating the performance, and I mean just that, and it's just so many dynamics and ways to think about that.
When you think about the fact that they don't have that past together, but then now they're kind of building upon those characters together. Whereas, let's go back to Gandalf and Saruman. They do have a past, and if you saw The Hobbit, obviously it expanded upon it. Whereas, unfortunately, when we saw The Hobbit out of sequence, out of sequence with The Lord of the Rings, kind of like a prequel trilogy. Obviously, we are kind of predicting things. We already know some certain things, and so when we look at Saruman, we're like, oh, he's evil, and everything.
And even the movie presents it that way. Gandalf's like, ugh, like, but I don't get that sense when they made Fellowship of the Ring that's his attitude. But now that hindsight is 2020, and the actual filmmaking process takes place later, then they make the character do that. Even though if they would have made those Hobbit films before Fellowship of the Ring, Peter Jackson probably doesn't ask Ian McKellen to have that reaction on screen. So I think that was done kind of as we know the audience knows this guy's going to turn out bad. So it was done for as a gag for the audience, more or less.
In a lot of ways, you're thinking of the fact that they know, and so we're not going to portray this guy as all flowers and butterflies and sunsets and all that. He is at his core in it for himself. He's in it for his own gain. And when the Lord of the Rings, of course, comes out and he's got that chance to seize control, and even thinking along the lines that he can manipulate somehow the Lord of all evil, Sauron. And it's always funny that Tolkien decided to have his two villains, Sauron and Saruman.
I always thought that was a peculiar choice, because it's like the way I remember it is that the big bad guy's name is shorter. That's how I remember it, is that his name is short. His is the short version of it.
Did you ever see, this is a deviation, but it's okay, we have those in the show. Did you ever see the animated Lord of the Rings, Ralph Bakshi, 1970s film? It's okay if you didn't. It's not great. It's got some good points and some bad points, and there's some things that ended up in Peter Jackson's film. He actually, tributes them, or he what do you want to call it? Tributes. He winks, at that. We could talk about rip-offs. We've done that before in other shows, but the point is that in that they tried something to take care of that Sauron issue, and they occasionally called Saruman Aruman. They just dropped the S, and it was still but sometimes they didn't, and that was really confusing to us as the audience, and we were like, who is he talking about? Now it's just more confusing. It was bad enough that, in the books and in the films, we had that, but at least anytime they said Saruman, we could see his face on the screen, and anytime we said Sauron, we might hear that little voice in the background, the evil voice, in the ring and all that.
I mean, if you watch the movies, a couple of times, I mean, it doesn't become that big of an issue. But for the layman, somebody who's only going to go see the movie once because they were dragged there, I mean, and then they probably, if that's the case, they probably don't really care about who the character was anyway, and differentiating them.
But that kind of fight was kind of a master apprentice style fight. I don't know necessarily if he called. Well, he says that Saruman is the head of our wizard order.
He's the highest of all ranks.
Yes,
or whatever it is.
Yeah, and there's only 5 wizards left in the world of the Lord of the Rings. Something like that.
There's the Radagast the brown, and Gandalf the gray, and I think there's a couple other. I think there's a blue one somewhere. In the Hobbit book or the Lord of the Rings book, it says. But I don't think they're actually. And actually, the brown, he's not. They just added him into the Hobbit, I think. And just gave him all that stuff. So
but that's the point. Is that there is kind of that master, teacher student kind of fight going on there too. It's not just the pitting magical powers against each other. It's the fact that one is obviously superior to the other one, and so the underdog is Gandalf. But, in the fact that Gandalf gets to fight the Balrog, and he, is reborn through that process into Gandalf the White.
And there's different, and even in that and a lot of the fantasy MMO video game industry is built upon like what Tolkien introduced so many years ago in those books and all these things. So in a lot of those concepts, and people have made EverQuest and all these games that they've made, and all these and you get into that kind of high fantasy stuff. But there is, even in Lord of the Rings, they acknowledge that there are different levels of power with that, with the rankings of the colors that you have. And then there's also, he says about the Balrog, he says, there are some things in this world that I can't beat. And he's like, and then there's some things I've not been tested. So it's not necessarily that the Balrog is more powerful or less powerful, but he could be, or he could be. Like, he could be more powerful than me, or maybe I could beat him. I don't know. But there are varying layers of power, which is something I more see in video games detailed. In movies, they don't even... Even in Star Wars, when you talk about Anakin Skywalker, him being the chosen one, you never even see it come to fruition as far as him being really more powerful than any of the other Jedi. He's just kind of just as powerful as the rest of them. He talks about being more powerful, but he never gets there. The potential's never kind of displayed. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting, and that's a topic for another day, obviously. But just an interesting little tidbit while we're on a Lord of the Rings rant. That kind of stuff is included in there, like, as far as those fights go.
And I always think that way too. Who's the underdog in this? And the same thing with the Batman and all this. He's got obviously abilities over the Joker.
I gotta go level up before I fight this guy.
Right? Yeah, but it's what it is. What's the technique that the Joker used? Now, I guess if we could maybe in a friendly sort of way, if I were to pit these two fights up against each other, and I were trying to convince somebody that I'm going to get more votes maybe for my fight than the other. We're not going to do that, but let's just say we were. Why is it that I might sell somebody on my fight versus your fight? I would say that maybe what advantage I have in the Batman Joker is that. Is that passion, that cutting you to the core, and I think that's what in the audience when they're watching that conflict happen between Batman and Joker, you're like, wow, how is he going to beat this guy? It's like he can't just use his gadgets, he can't just use his intelligence and his great fighting skills to beat this guy. And even when he's sitting there in the interrogation room, the Joker has an advantage over Batman. He's like, I can't kill him. He has information.
Even when he beats him to like not a bloody pulp, because I didn't want the movie to be rated R, but basically nearly to a bloody pulp, he says, you have nothing that can hurt me.
Right.
He's like, all your strength, all this. He's like, you can punch me all you want. I'm not gonna break. Like, that's not how you can't break the Joker by pummeling him in the face. Like he's probably whatever his weakness is, it's not that. Like, it's not physical torment. Like, you're not going to break him that way. Like, it's something else. Like, you'd have to get into his head and figure out that particular version of the Joker's, brain. And it probably would take, like, a psychologist to do it. And then we see where that goes in certain multiverses of the Batman and different versions of Batman, how the whole psychology thing turns out for people and the doctors and all that stuff. So, I would agree, because really that whole movie is built up in that storyline, so it definitely has an advantage there over mine, because the Gandalf and Saruman thing is largely thrust upon us kind of out of nowhere, so it has the advantage of being up a trail that we get to see, where the Joker, he's never friends with Batman, so I would say I have an advantage because I can check mark that box for a betrayal that led to a fight. So I've got that. I've got that in my favor. You've got some pros. I've got some pros to mine. That's just the one that always just thinks, it jumps to my head. Like that when you just say best fight, and I try to just think of things that I don't think of every day, but what is something that will pop in my head when I think of that? And that's the one I did, and it's just one moment in the movie. It's never really built up for another encounter. It's not the point of the movie, so you definitely got the advantage there with Batman and Joker. But I've kind of got like that little. I've got the master apprentice kind of aspect. You've got. And I've got the betrayal aspect. So.
Which that cuts us to the core too. It's like, think about it, someone who you admired all these years what? You're inevitable betrayal, and now I've got to fight you because of this. I don't want to, but I have to. And there is something to be said, because Gandalf is not just fighting for his life; he's fighting for Frodo's life. And so I'd say there's a pro too,
in the fate of the world.
The world, yes. The ring, that pure evil that he's like, but no, none of us can possess this thing. Do you understand? No.
There's actually a really cool YouTube series, and one of the videos the guy does. Maybe I'll find it and can throw it in a link on the show, and I'll send the link to Nick so we can throw it in there. But it's basically a speculation of what would happen if Gandalf did take the ring from Frodo that night. And what, the eventual corruption and all these. He basically plots it out as a story and just kind of says, then he would do this and that. And it's just kind of cool to see one person's speculation on what would Gandalf do if he possessed the One Ring, and how he would basically, it would corrupt him, and he would take over the earth for a time until he could be defeated, and then Sauron would get the ring.
Right.
That's basically what. He'd
be a pawn.
That's the crux of the story. That's the high and low of it. But I'll try to find that link and put it in the show description.
And you kind of said a con, so I'll say a con, kind of maybe to what maybe disadvantage this conflict, this fight has. Leaving out choreography and the physical, fighting between them. I would say that a lot of us going into that film were distracted by the fact that we had the tragedy of Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
And we had, that kind of hanging over our heads. We were obviously blown away by his performance, even though it was so, Heath Ledger's going to be the next Joker. And we were kind of thinking what we're thinking now when we had Jared Leto as he's going to be the next Joker. And then we got.
I remember I was on the internet the night that image finally came out of Heath Ledger's face as the Joker before the movie came out and it leaked. I remember everybody was like, the tide started turning right there, this might be good.
Yeah, that it's going to be unexpected, and we see Jared Leto, or Leto, whatever his name is, as the Joker, and we're just like, and we see now Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and we're thinking that same thing. Maybe we'll be surprised. I don't know, but we were definitely caught off guard by this guy who basically encompassed Nero, that he wants to see the world burn while he plays the flute, or violin. I think he played the fiddle while Rome burned as Nero. And so, Joker is kind of bringing that in, and Heath Ledger, brought that in, not to demean maybe necessarily Jack Nicholson, because Jack Nicholson did what I think they brought him in and hired him to do, was kind of be Jack Nicholson, because he's, he also demands a lot of attention too, and I think that makes kind of for a cool Joker too. But he didn't, I think, have what what really broke Batman down with setting aside all his strength. And so I could say one of the things that was that distraction was Heath Ledger, and the fact that we weren't going to get any more, because this was it, and everyone would agree we're going to do the next movie. Well, the intention is obviously to bring the Joker back somehow, right? And have a conflict between Batman, but we can't now. We don't have that actor. And if we bring in another actor, it's not just gonna. It's just gonna
break. It basically, in that situation, because he was at that point in that version of Batman was so tied, it would be almost continuity breaking to bring in another actor. I think it would have broken any kind of immersion. That the hardcore fan base had. It would be. They replace actors all the time. I mean, they replace Rhodey,
Dumbledore,
everything. They replaced Dumbledore. Well, he died.
That actor died.
He's not, we really hadn't got to the big Dumbledore moments.
We hadn't
in the Harry Potter movies yet. At that point, we'd had a couple nice moments, and he was great as Dumbledore, and we liked him. But we didn't really. And then, of course. Who's the actor's name who replaced him? It completely escapes me at the moment. They call him Angry Dumbledore because in the first few he has these kind of almost tantrums where he's kind of angry and it's it's not really how Dumbledore ever acted in the books. He never ever raised his voice or anything like that. It was always but you see him kind of slam his hand or do that in these certain scenes like in Goblet of Fire or especially Goblet of Fire. He's very fiery for some reason, and a lot of the fan base complain about it. Anyway, we're way off topic here, but
that's the thing is when you do replace an actor, and so the Joker.
I think it works. I mean, you can do it most of the time. That was my point. You can do it, and it worked in that situation. But I just think that it's such a special circumstance where it's not the norm. You can replace Rhodey in Iron Man And it's like, yeah, the actor
Sure.
cares because he didn't get his paycheck. But, I mean, the rest of us are like, whatever. Like, we're here to see Robert Downey Jr. anyway.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
nothing against Terrence Howard or any of those, or Don Cheadle or any of those guys. But in this scenario, you are not the reason we're here. The bias, like the referees in a sport. We're not here to see you make calls. We're here to see the superstars,
Right.
basically. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so it's that kind of thing where it's like you can do it. But in that very special circumstance, you couldn't have replaced that version of the Joker.
And now we have the fact that we're not going to get another, Gandalf. We have Ian McKellen still, but Christopher Lee's passed away now, and so we're not going to get another. If they were able to, let's say, bring in another Lord of the Rings / Hobbit, because there's other books that are out there that they could maybe adapt to film. We're not going to get another, conflict between them or a remake of what they had or anything like that because
and I don't
we have
necessarily
that.
know that it's even wanted, but yet we've had
Yeah.
thousands of different conflict versions of Batman and the Joker and the different, through the comic books and everything. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we're not getting, even if Ledger, now those movies are over anyway. Like, we're in a completely different version
Universe,
of Batman and everything now anyway. So even if Heath was still around, everything's totally different now. So it's fun to speculate, but there's multiple reasons why none of this stuff is going to happen again. So
Yeah, I know.
but that's why we talk. That's why, guys. That's why we sit here and we talk about that stuff because there's going to be moments like that we still want to be nostalgic about and things like that. We want to talk about.
Yep.
So that's where we'll go back. We'll talk about modern stuff. And we might talk about really old stuff. So, but that's the fun thing is you get the stuff isn't made to watch once and then sweep it under the rug and forget about it. Oh, it came out 20 years ago. Why are you talking about that movie? Because it's fun to talk about this stuff. That's why we're doing the show. That's why
That's right.
Push the record button on YouTube, right?
That's right.
So,
yeah. So I think with this one, we'll probably in future episodes have other kind of even fantasy matchups, things like that we were talking about, and other show topic
I think
ideas.
we'll have individual shows focused. We'll have just one like on a Star Wars topic, and we won't bring Star Trek into that one or whatever. I would say we're going to be doing a lot of different variety of shows. This was kind of, we'll talk about layered, a show that has a multitude of layers and range in it. We were all over the place on this one. I think future episodes, while each episode might be a different topic and a different genre or talking about a different movie, I think we hopefully we'll get to that point where we're able to stay in the realm of, let's talk about Kylo Ren this episode, and then the next episode, let's talk about Thanos, and kind of stay on track a little bit. But this is a fun first couple episodes, and I'm glad anybody out there has joined us and experiencing the birth of the galaxy of fiction.
Yep, and I think, if you've stuck with us this long in these last couple of episodes, thank you for that. Thank you for supporting. Definitely subscribe, all that good stuff. But we don't have to tell you what to do out there in YouTube land. You know what to do. But I tell you what, let us know what you think. And, if you're sticking with us, we're going to have plenty of topics coming out, and it's just going to be fun and friendly. And I think, as we go along, we're gonna have new ideas. I can't even think of what the next thing is we're gonna have, and that's the best. That's the beauty of this, and you guys can share it out there and let people know, and even suggest some topics. We're open to any of those kinds of things. So for me, Nick Adam Poling, and we got Joe Stinson here. That's been great having you. We'll catch you next time right here on Galaxy of Fiction.